Okay, my name is Michaelesposito, and I work usually under an umbrella with my research partner Heidi Harmon over at the table called Phantom Airwaves. It's used for a myriad of things. How many people have had experience with EVP here? How many people have done research? Get an idea? Okay, great. For those of you who do not know what EVP is, it's electronic voice phenomena. Basically, as termed by Friedrich Jurgensen in the 50s, audioscopic research, or I like to call it recording voices of unknown origin. Sometimes people claim that they're voices from the dead or the deceased, and sometimes people claim that they're from aliens from outer space. But irregardless, what we are looking for when we do EVP research is voices that weren't present in the room or can't be explained as far as ambient radio waves or audio Rorschach, if you will. What I want to do first is I want to give a couple examples of EVP, and I'm making this bigger, that I've collected. Some of these are from the Sally House. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. Some of these are some of the research I've done at the Sally House. Sometimes CVPs aren't very nice, very friendly. Here's one that was captured at the Sally House. Meet you in hell. There's two voices there. I just keep going forever. One time we were investigating when Discovery Channel. Anybody seen A Haunting? Okay. The film crew had come to do interviews and do some shots of the Sally House in Atchison, and they got there early before we did. So the cameraman, interviewer, went to the house, and they were down in the house, and actually, literally ran out. They went down, they ended up in the basement somehow, and all their hair stood on end, and they thought it was time to leave. So later, Deborah Pickman, who's the wife of Tony Pickman, who was scratched up really bad over time there. It was in sightings in the early 90s when they broke the story on the Sally House, was standing by a heater. She was talking about how it's cold. Now, she's standing by the heater, and I'm the only other person in the room. I'm standing there. I thought I heard someone behind my head, behind my ear. I turn around, there's no one there. I mean, how many people have ever thought they heard someone and turn around, there's absolutely no one there? Well, this is the EVP that came out of it, so it kind of makes you wonder what you're actually hearing. This is Pour Her In, and you might hear Deborah as well in this. Father, pour her in. Again, sometimes you catch singing or voices like a singing or crying or something that's not necessarily speaking, but something that's definitely of unknown origin of somebody that wasn't there. This is a female singing in a arpeggio that we captured also at the house. And I want to show a few pictures too, because I'm going to go back to some EVPs in just a little bit. But I wanted to, these are pictures that Tony Pickman took at the Sally House. Now, different people have different tools that they use and that they're very good with. A lot of people believe it's based on their particular mediumship. I couldn't take a picture of a ghost to save my life. but I can record and capture voices. Robbie just simply speaks to the dead. Other people can use photographs or what have you. These are pictures from Tony Pickman. He takes a photograph, and you can almost guarantee that there'll be a spirit in it. The pictures that I'm going to show you are actually from his house, and you'll see an entity actually walking through a door. It's a series of shots that he took. And then he walked right out the door and took a picture of me, and it completes the series. You see it forming. He's literally chasing it around the room. And this is at the house he lives in now. You see the arms, the legs, the head, or the torso rather. And you'll see above my head it's kind of like a haze or a weird fluctuation. But since everybody else had ghost photographs and I never did, I put some up. So now, when conducting EVP research, a lot of it's based on frequencies. We're trying to capture frequencies that are something that's not audible to us that they capture on other electronic devices. Somebody asked me to give sort of a slight history on EVP, but without going into really great detail, that ever since the spiritualist movement in the middle 80s, the 1880s that is, we've had direct voice phenomena. That's where a medium speaks, or a spirit speaks through a spirit horn or directly through a medium. It's called direct voice phenomena. Once we actually started being able to record voices electronically, or by electronic means, then those became electronic voice phenomena. In 1901, a man by the name of Burgos's worked on a joint U.S.-Russian expedition to Siberia called the Jessup Expedition. And he used the Edison wax cylinders to record basically folk song and stories and stuff from these indigenous peoples of Siberia. He was recording a Chukchi shaman doing a incantation in a hut to raise the dead of sorts, to speak to the dead. And he actually captured voices on Edison wax cylinder in English and in Russian. They're held at the National Archives right now, the Natural Archives of America. Since then, people have been capturing unexplained voices throughout history. Some of the more famous ones, of course, are Friedrich Jurgensen in the 50s, Konstantin Rodai from the 60s, who actually had studied with Jurgensen for a small bit, met him a few times. Edison had attempted to build a communication device in the late 20s, early 30s. He died in 31, I believe. My great-great-uncle actually was the office manager for his office at the time. So basically what we're looking at is we're looking at frequencies that aren't present. Some of the research and some of the theories that I've been working on involve adding frequencies to the atmosphere, because when you do paranormal research, you can affect three things. You can affect the researcher, prepare the researcher that's building personal energy, or as my partner Heidi Harmon, who's an energy worker, does. She helps affect the researchers themselves. The second thing is affecting the environment. You can add things to the environment or what have you to make the environment you're working in more conducive to capturing spirit activity. Or third, actually affect the spirit itself, like, for instance, provoking would be an ideal way of affecting the spirit. What we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about affecting the environment, adding frequencies to the environment, adding things to the environment that help you capture manifestation of audio, of unexplained audio. theory has it when the spirit is trying to create communication, he is taking atmospheric particles and them into a waveform. Everything that we do, make a noise, everything we say is in waveform, and waveform is energy. The spectrum of waveform is absolutely huge. It's actually kind of a joke of how big it is. But I like this because you see the visible light, and you see that spectrum there of visible light. That is what we can see, and it's so small. Now, light and things that we see also are waveform as well as audio. So you have, everything from infrared, gamma, radioactive. Let me pull up a reel. This is a government frequency allocation, which will give you an idea of the full spectrum. It's huge. I mean, it goes everything from microwaves to gamma rays and everything in between. Now, when we hear a very limited spectrum. Like you saw how small the visible light spectrum was. Well, we also hear a very, very limited spectrum of sound. For probably at max, at our very best, we can hear between 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, depending on our age, our physical ability, how strong we are. So we're working within a very small range for audible. But beyond that range, the infrasonic, which is everything that's lower than 20 hertz, and ultrasonic, which is everything larger or higher than 20 kilohertz, create things in us like feelings, or you may have heard of Brownian noise or brown noise affecting your bowel movements or something. I think there was an episode of Mythbusters where they tried to use Brownian noise, which is a certain set of frequencies, also called drunken man's walk, that supposedly make you lose your intestinal fortitude. So everything that we can't hear, there's also the ability to feel. So equipment-wise, when I go out and look for a set of headphones and stuff, they actually make headphones that'll capture as low as 5 hertz, which is very, very low, considering you can only hear 20 hertz. A lot of times you're at a concert or something, or a really good classic example is if you go to orchestras or symphonies, and you have a very emotional, moving piece. And it may not be necessarily the actual composed piece, but very likely what it is because of the design of the woodwinds or the design of the violins and such, that it creates quite a bit of infrasonic tone, which is emotionally moving. Some friends of mine who are experimental music artists did a concert recently in Berlin, I believe, that took an orchestra and a pipe organ, like in churches. And it's probably no surprise that they have pipe organs in churches because it creates a very moving atmosphere. And they took a huge fiberglass tube from the lowest register of the pipe organ and extended it straight out into the... Now, during the concert, people that were closer to the actual pipe that was run out into the audience just broke out in tears. Just wept emotionally. They couldn't help themselves. So when you're in a room, and we had an experience like that last night at the investigation, where some people became extremely emotional, that actually could be a product of the lower register of waveform or noise below the hearing level. So below 20 hertz or 50 hertz, what have you. And so if you walk into a room, it feels uneasy. Something feels wrong here, something feels bad, or you get really emotional, or someone breaks out in tears during an investigation. It's very, very, very possible that what we're talking about is spirit trying to communicate with very low register of frequency. I do a lot of experimentation with noise and colors of noise, which the colors of noise you may have heard of: white noise and pink noise and blue noise and brown or red noise. They're all related to the visible spectrum, which we saw in the one chart. Now, these noises that are named after colors are actually composites of select frequencies. White noise obviously being like white light, which is the availability of all visible spectrum. White noise is the availability of all audible frequencies. So it's very heavy, very thick. I've actually not had very much luck using white noise. But pink than white noise, so they select frequencies a lot less dense than white noise. I've used actually an investigation in the Sally House and had a great experience of moving furniture. We were sitting at a table and we had investigators up in one of the rooms sitting there running pink noise. We were downstairs at the only other furniture in the whole house at this table. And off in the distance, it was me and two other investigators. We were working on laptops. And in the distance, you hear this popping noise, like fireworks, far, far away. It got louder and louder and louder. And then pretty soon, it sounded like people moving furniture over our heads. It's known as phantom furniture. Some people believe it's when the spirits are coming in or that there's going to be a lot of activity after that. It got so loud that we were running 15-minute experiments, and we went up to change out the experiment. We had a camera set up right underneath a trapdoor for an attic. And me and one of the investigators sitting there as the furniture moved and banged and bumped above our heads like something was going to come crashing through the ceiling there. And we just looked up and we just looked at each other and just shook our heads. So different noise types and different frequency combinations are really good to experiment with. So you can get out there, you can learn about the different frequencies and try different experiments. There's absolutely nothing you can't accomplish by going out there and trying things. Here's an example of a hint that we may have got. This is another EVP from the Sally House. It spurned a lot of experiments after we captured it. It's called the Blue and the Gold. It's an Irish woman, and you'll hear her very clearly. But after this came out, we were doing a lot of research on blue and gold or yellow sound, light, energy, waveform, whatever it could mean, because basically consider maybe a technician from the other side trying to give us some idea. And here's that EVP. Now, actually, during that same investigation, one of the researchers wanted to show us some EVP that he had captured on a laptop. Now, one of the techniques that we use also in EVP research is sometimes we take a recording that we've recorded of an EVP and we play it and re-record it on another recorder and then download that and clean and go through it. It's a very classic recording technique from the very beginnings of modern recording. And during this, we captured an EVP that wasn't on the laptop. There's two women in it. One's one I call the old hag. It says, "Die here." And then there's a very panicked woman after that, asking either "die here" or "why here." And this was spurred on by the frequency generated by playing EVP off this laptop. First one. She doesn't sound too happy. Also, though, we've run into occasions of voice borrowing. When we are investigating in a location, we also add to the environment. We don't go into a location to investigate without affecting the environment we're working in. Like you have a visual doppelganger, which is a ghost of your vision, of your persona. Like if you ever, one time I was sitting in my room and my brother walked down the hallway. I sat there waiting for him to come back because I wanted to ask him a question. Well, then I saw him walk the same direction right, past the doorway again. And he hadn't come back. That's a doppelganger. Now, an audio doppelganger is what I call voice borrowing. And it's where the spirit entity takes your voice or your voice pattern and creates, using the energy that you create, the waveform, and creates EVP with it. Okay. This one's called maggots. You'll hear me talking underneath it. Now, what I'm saying is I'm saying, oh, I forgot something downstairs because I had to go down and get it. But what you hear above it sounds like me talking about maggots, and it wasn't me. That's not me. Sorry about this. All right, let's do this. You hear it at the end, Rory. You hear me talking underneath it right there. Sorry about this. All right, let's do this. Pretty creepy. See some faces on that. I spend a lot of time developing noise types. In fact, I also collect them. I have CDs at home, things called Baby's First White Noise or Baby's Electric Fan. You get a lot of stuff that people have created to help babies sleep and whatever. Baby's ionizer, baby's vacuum cleaner. But I also set out, I look for things that create different sets of frequencies that will somehow may enhance what I'm researching on. Here's an example I used with a child's toy, one of those plastic tubes you spin around. I call this roommate noise because I did it with my roommate at home. Now that's kind of interesting stuff, and it's good because you can bring CDs in and bring a boombox in and use things like white noise, pink noise, or colorless noise, created noises. I have actually back at the table I have a whole selection of noises that me and my research team had created when I was with Haunted Voices. They're for sale, including things like phonograph record hiss, which was a record needle at the end of a phonograph, and some different things that we created to try and elicit different kinds of response. Now in ghost hunting, there's two basic types of entities as far as main categorization. There's residual, which is like a motion picture replaying itself. It's something from the past that, due to certain atmospheric situations, have been re-released into the environment, and you're able to capture it. Some event that's replaying itself. And then there's active haunting, which is something that you can interact with, something that actually, can answer questions and you can interact with. Certain noises I create, like old-time radios or horses walking along a cobblestone, pulling a carriage and stuff. The idea behind that is it's possible to free up frequencies that have been embedded into porous materials in the structure like brick or rock or plaster or wood, and bring them back out by introducing frequencies that might be familiar or have the same frequency combinations as the frequency I'm trying to release. So obviously they didn't have Prince during the 1880s. But if I played John Philip Sousa, I may have a certain combination of frequencies that might be able to help release frequencies that I'm trying to capture. So a lot of the noises, like antique radios over there, was done with an old radio from a specific time period that had a certain crystal set in the radio that would emit waveform or frequencies. that might be familiar to that time period. So when you're using noise, you need to be concerned with what results you're trying to attain. Sometimes when I use noise, I try and directly create something at the time that will help release the embedded EVP for like a residual EVP or what have you by manually creating it. Now, when I manually create it, I look at waveform as different sizes. When you use certain things, you can create different combinations of frequencies. Just a couple examples. These are cymbals. They're broken cymbals. I got a friend that's a drum teacher, and when he breaks a cymbal, they throw it away. But the guy's nice enough to give them to me. I mean, you can find almost anything. Now, one of the nice things about cymbals is it creates a large spectrum of frequencies versus a minute. Now, there's a very large spectrum of frequencies, which you can hear, and you can hear it resonate. Now, you can also get specific about it, too. This is a snare cymbal. Now, a snare cymbal has a frequency range of between 100 and 200 hertz. So when I throw this, even though it's creating a large array of frequencies, it's really about 100 hertz of frequencies in different form because of the ridging. But I know specifically what frequencies I'm working in. Now, there's other types of things you can use in tools. This is going to create, this is a singing bowl. You can get these, or another thing is like a crystal glass half full of water, like Benjamin Franklin's glass organ, which were glass plates. Now, what this is going to create is it's going to create a more narrow set of frequencies, but not a pinpoint frequency, like a wave generator doing sine waves or saw waves or square waves will create a very direct pinpoint frequency, which is what I do with my tuning fork experiments, which I'll show you in a second here. But this is going to create a narrow band of frequencies at a given point. In fact, this one is actually in the key of B. And the key of B is .87 hertz. And that's pretty pinpoint, pretty direct. But it releases itself into the atmosphere, and as the wavelength spreads out, it actually changes the pitch. So when you hit this, from its inception, from right here, it's a B, it's at 30.87 hertz. But as it spreads out, it changes pitch, and it's going to change the frequency. I'll show you an example of this. So you can actually get pretty loud with these. Another experiment that I've done quite a bit of work with, in fact, I've worked with Robbie on this experiment quite a bit, and it's worked out nice, especially with interacting with a medium, is tuning forks. And I've actually had some bad experiences with this too. But taking a tuning fork and actually shooting the waveform directly into a wall, an old stone wall, a wooden floor, objects for object-based EVP. Hopefully, the theory is that it will release, frequencies that match or respond to this particular frequency. We were in the basement of the Sally House one time filming, and Chris O'Brien, Ron James, Amy Allen, who's a medium off of a haunting in Connecticut. No, haunting in Georgia. And a couple of episodes of a haunting. We're in the basement, and I was doing tuning fork experiments. It was one of the first times that I really hadn't planned on this to happen, but it created a two-way travel. So as I was putting frequencies into this original stone foundation, frequencies were coming back out and into the room, which normally would be a good thing, but not in this particular situation. Tony Pickman was there. He left to go get pizza for the kids, had to pull over the side road, was puking his guts out. Chris O'Brien was sick for 3 weeks. with heavy flu-like symptoms. I was sick immediately for 2 weeks. Chris O'Brien had to leave because he almost stopped breathing in the basement. He had to leave, stop filming. Absolutely, Amy Allen was sick for a month. Everyone got just horribly ill, horribly sick. So now I'm a little more cautious when I use these. I still do a lot of work with them. In fact, in Ghost Asylum, there's some film footage of me doing experiments on the floor, putting waveform into the floor. Now, if you're out investigating and you want to try some experiments and do some different things that, you don't necessarily have to have special equipment. Infrasonic sound can be created by rubbing your fingertips together. Your fingerprints rubbing together actually creates infrasonic sound. So a lot of times when I'm recording with my microphone, I will, or my your recorder, or what have you, I'll rub my fingertips together in front of the recording device, or in front of that. Try that sometime. See if that can't, do something. Or if I'm recording in the graveyard, a lot of times I'll scoot my feet, especially in the autumn. I like it because you can scoot your feet in the leaves. Now, some people claim that that's a possibility you're going to get audio Rorschach that way, or what have you. But you can really tell the difference between leaves crunching and something that creates certain linguistic features that can only be made by a human being. There's always a two sides to that coin. Does it create audio Rorschach, or does it create frequency for the spirit to use? One man's tangerines is another man's orange. Does anybody have any questions or anything about it?
Regarding what makes you choose what device you're using to generate sound frequencies? Just take out as much as you have, or specify?
It doesn't. Yeah, I mean, I do sometimes put some thought into the location. It's all about location, or if you're looking for a specific thing. If I want to use something that might be a historical sounds, I record atmospheric sounds, and that, in fact, I've got a whole set of CDs put out by Firework Edition Records out of Sweden that are over the table. And experimental musicians are very fond of doing this. Environmental musicians or experimental musicians, they like to put these frequencies with other types of frequencies. So what I'll do is sometimes I'll actually record the structure. Like record the windows with contact microphones and the walls and the floors, and then build that all into a piece using the EVP collected from there. So it becomes sort of an audioscopic archaeological picture of the, it's experimental phenomenology. It's a full, complete picture of our investigation of what we're doing.
What program do you use? It just reminds me of Walt Disney's Fantasia, watching it.
Oh, yeah, that's just off of the Windows. That's the Windows play. Yeah, but I use Adobe Edition.
Okay, and the singing below. Now, is that to raise my war spirit to utilize, or what is the purpose of it?
What utility they pull? Well, it depends who you talk to. I mean, some people say it's to raise the energy of the room, but what they mean is the same thing. Basically, I'm looking at, ghost hunting and EVP research in general, specifically, are very based in quantum physics. Okay, if you talk to an energy worker, that's why I work with Heidi, because she's more of the non-scientific end of things. She actually works in the energy work, and is very heavily rooted in Celtic origins and Middle Eastern origins and Asian origins. And I keep more on the scientific level. So you run a singing bowl, to Heidi is going to mean something completely different than to me. To me, I'm adding frequencies or energy to a room. To her, she's adding energy or, more of an emotive feel to a room, or a spiritual, if you will.
Just reminds me of, you ever seen All of Age and Tomlin? She dies, and we wait for the guru, and he's doing the singing bowl, jumping, totally while it's singing, so get her to
To come out.
funny.
I just want to know if you
Um,
grandson went to film school and he does a lot of ambient sounds. I've heard worse things come out of my face than when he was living with me, but the ambient sounds seems to be quite the thing now.
my yeah. To answer your question, my ancestry, my great great uncle was Alfred Vail on my mother's side. He invented the Morse code, worked with Samuel Morse. His brother was the for Thomas Edison for years, and come from a very long line of communication inventors. My formal education, I hold a master's in communication theory and undergraduate work in communication and communication theory from Purdue University, University of Notre Dame. Studied at American University in Cairo, Egypt. So it's more along the lines of communication and communication theory. The frequency work and the computer work is really based on the computer work that I did. Actually, the experimental musicians and stuff I work with in Sweden, what have you, had been doing work with EVP for a long time. Carl Michael von Hasswolf, who's experimental musician out of Stockholm, that I've got an album coming out, The Haunted Priest House. I don't know if you saw the Ghost Hunters International where they went to Sweden and they did the Haunted Priest House. Okay, well, before they got there, I did an exhibit in Östersund, Sweden, for the Farfabriken Noor exhibit in Stockholm. But it was in Östersund, Sweden, and then Mickey von Hasswolf, me and two Canadians, investigators, went to the Haunted Priest House, and we did an investigation and some research there. That's coming out on a CD very soon, actually, probably a month or so on Firework Edition Records. But Mickey actually got a hold of, and I don't know, how many know who Friedrich Jürgensen was? He's considered one of the pioneers of EVP research in the 50s. He was a papal artist. He did portraits of 4 popes. He was an archaeologist. He was an opera singer and a filmmaker. And he did quite a bit of the early strong research in EVP. Mickey von Hasswolf's father-in-law was a TV star in Sweden. And one day he was out visiting, and Mickey's dad said, "Hey, have you seen, Jurgensen's, mistress?" This is after Jurgensen died. Mickey was working on an album based on EVP called Operations of Spirit Communication. He said, no, I didn't know. And he goes, well, she lives right down the road. So he went over and visited her. And he had to visit her several times because she has autism, and she kept forgetting meeting him. And eventually he met her enough times and stuff that all of Friedrich Jürgensen's complete office, all of his tapes, all of his recordings, all of his articles, all of everything was just sitting there, untouched. She gave Jürgensen's to Mickey. And Mickey put the exhibit together and toured it around the world several times. In fact, last time I was in Stockholm visiting Mickey, he gave me 2 photographs of Jürgensen from Jürgensen's office, which are like prized possessions now. One of him at the Vatican during one of his stays at the Vatican, because he used to go down there and do research. And one during one of his TV interviews in the 50s. But Jürgensen had discovered EVP and took it to the Vatican and said, hey guys, look what I'm getting. I think the first EVP he captured was he was recording bird song in his backyard, field recordings. And he heard his mother's voice calling Friedel, and she was the only one calling Friedel. So young Friedel, I'm here. And so he took it to the papacy, and the Pope said, we know all about this. It's okay. Which is a whole different lecture. That's a whole different thing. But anyway, any more questions about introducing frequencies? Or?
Have you worked with Gervais in the crystal setup?
Yeah, Rodive microphones. Konstantin Rodive worked with Jürgensen, met him a few times, spurred him to do his own research. He was a Latvian psychologist and scientist. And he used what they call a germanium or a wire microphone. And what it is it's two pieces of germanium crystal, because crystal vibrates at a higher frequency than all other materials. So a lot of times when you see pendulums and stuff made of crystal, it's because they vibrate easier, because they capture a wider array of frequencies. And the germanium microphone's two thin pieces of crystal with a diode and a wire that runs up, and it's a wire or diode microphone. I have one. I've used them. They're hard to work with.
That's another question. I don't have any education in this area, and as a person that does do that kind of thing, if I was to use, say, a singing bowl or some crystals, and it's not doing great in my house, because I'm still having trouble dealing with acid.
Mm-hmm.
Would I, if I use those things, would it be dangerous for me? Would it be that I'm inviting bad stuff around?
There's a lot of theories about that. I've had things happen to me as well, but I'll say this: my personal feelings on it are is the mindset that you go into a situation with is what you'll get out of it. If you go into it afraid or open to things happening to you, they will. But if you go in as a purely friendly and quizzical person, then they may least likely have things happen to you. Of course, I don't know. Nobody does.
Well, you know what? I am going to try it, and I will trade forward to that. I'm going to try it.
Yeah, every research, yeah.
I'll have it over order, and I'll save it, ready to start. And, eventually I'll give it to Robbie and see.
Well, like you hear a lot of people talk about EVP, and they talk about you need to say thank you at the end, and you need to do this and you need to do that. The one thing about that that's really good is it creates ritual. And why we have ritual in religions and what have you is to create a comfort zone or familiarity. I mean, I was born Roman Catholic, but I converted to Lutheranism when I was young. We went to Lutheran church and blah blah blah. And so I converted to Islam to get married. But whenever I hear a mass, it's warm and familiar to me. So if you create a ritual, every experimental, every researcher needs to find out who they are as a researcher. They have to understand who they are and be comfortable with what they're doing when they research. So how do you do that? You do that by building ritual. Build things that make you feel strong and safe and warm. Hope that answered your question. Okay. Anything else?
Since spirits are attracted to vibration, and colors give off their individual vibrations and frequencies, would it make a difference wearing certain colors, painting rooms certain colors? Would it make them more inviting to spirits?
That's really a good question. Spirits, when we die, our soul is an energy. That's the only thing that's left. Actually, people have tried to weigh it, the difference between a body that's alive and then when it dies. And actually, for a time, there were people that claimed they actually been able to measure a weight change, that energy has weight, because energy does have atomic weight. So when we die, we become energy. Now, whether or not we're attracted to like frequencies or like energy, or if we use like frequencies or energy to manipulate, to create things that are familiar to us, like speech or physical being, or visual manifestation, is nothing more than the energy that once made up our body, or that filled our body, trying to find familiar ground. It's just trying to remember the shape of your face. Because your body will remember that. I mean, look at Kirlian photography. When you cut off an arm or something, take a photograph of it, the outline of the arm is there. Your soul, your energy, will remember the shape of your hand. You'll have pain in it, phantom pain. I've done some research with, along the lines of phantom pain, but using audio, as far as remembrance. So when you see a physical manifestation, is it energy trying to remember its physical form? So to answer your question about wearing certain colors and things like that, when light refracts off of, well, what we see is due to our cones and rods. It's light refracting off of colored materials. Now, my black shirt, the molecules in it spin at a different rate than your red shirt. Will that wavelength that it creates because of that seem more familiar to me than the red shirt? Sure, why not? You know, we gotta keep asking questions. So, if you know somebody, you were investigating someone that always loved purple, purple's the refraction, the light refraction of purple spins at a different rate than red. So wear purple. You know, anything you can do to help. It's all based in quantum mechanics, on physics.
I read the Celestine prophecies years ago, and I did experiment with where you look at something and you see the aura, and you see the shape. What do you think of that series?
I do remember seeing part of that series, that particular series, but as far as all aura photography and that whole line of things, spirit faces, Mark Macy has this whole thing he's working on in spirit faces. You know, it's a device he's created that actually takes pictures, see spirits just over your face. You know, again, it goes all back to energy. It goes back to waveform. You know, so spirit auras, yeah, spirit can relate itself to color because color is a spectral waveform. Now you can't see it when we're looking at it because it isn't something that spins naturally in the visible white light, like we saw that little bitty thing. Okay, but if you use a device like some of the spirit photography tools that they use to change the speed of that waveform, it may take it down or bring it up to a visible light waveform spin. You know.
When I was looking at it, just you're sort of focusing in your eyes, sort of go crooked a little bit. Really?
Yeah.
And I could see, you know, just objects in the house, I could see like the shape that it was, but further energy light coming from different objects. Not that I got anything.
Really, just a second, really quickly, there's an audio version of that too. You know what a sonic boom is, right? Okay, you ever record EVP and you hear a snap or a pop or what some people refer to as like a whip sound just before an EVP? Those are called microbursts. What they are is they're molecularly small sonic booms. In other words, some energy is traveling fast enough, faster than the speed of sound, to create the tail of that energy traveling there to whip against itself at the end. Like a sonic boom, but micro burst. And so you have to ask yourself if what it is the energy that the spirit is using to try and create an EVP moving faster than the speed of sound to manipulate that energy. So a lot of times when you catch an EVP, listen for it. Listen for the crack or the snap. It sounds like a whip. Pop. Okay, one more question? One more question.
So would it be beneficial then when you're taking photographs to perhaps use colored filters?
You can use colored filters in the equivalent of that in audio, because again, I'm not a photographer. I focus on the audio, but we use different scientific filters, different types of microphones, as well as equipment. I have open reel micro recorders, some big Pioneer 18-inch, rack mount reel-to-reels, micro recorders, micro cassette recorders, full-size cassette recorders, DATs. Use mini disc recorders, which were popular for a very short time in the 80s, but the Europeans still love them. I've got maybe the little voice dictaphone recorders that we use so much. I've probably got 200 different types. Different chipsets, different microphones, different calibrations. It all matters. So just seriously, get out there and try filters, windscreens, absorption tiles. Like the studios have on the tiles on the walls. Try those. Record in a tin can. I know some people that take recorders and put them in glass bell jars, bury them in the ground. You know, I use hydrophones to go into water. You know, like field recordists do. I have a lot of friends who do field recordings of glaciers moving in Antarctica. We use, you know, hydrophones and other types of microphones that record underwater. Contact microphones, you can build them at Radio Shack. Little flat piezoelectric microphone discs. Attach them to a wire that'll plug into a recorder, and you can tape them to walls, tape them to the floor. You know, just try everything. All right, well, listen, I'd like to thank you guys. My table's over there, and if you want to stop by, you know, please.
Mr. Mike Esposito, a lot of information there, folks.